Hello, and welcome to Just a Minotaur. And as the Minotaur waltz fades away, I'd like to welcome all the viewers and listeners from around the world who are joining me as we welcome 4 fantastic players of this game of linguistic manipulation and mastery, Just a Minotaur. Joining me are Chloe, Taylor, Hamilton, and JR, who will be speaking on a given subject with no hesitation, repetition, or deviation for 60 seconds, where they will then win a point. If they are interrupted incorrectly, they will also win a point, but if there is a correct interruption, that interrupting person will gain a point and gain control of the subject. The person that's speaking, when the 60 seconds is fully elapsed, will gain a point as well. And with no further ado, let us jump into our first subject. Chloe, I would like you to tell me about the subject of my favorite alchemist. 60 seconds to talk about my favorite alchemist with no hesitations, deviations, or repetitions, starting now.
My favourite alchemist is not trying to turn other metals into gold. No. He is trying to make...
Hamilton.
No.
Off the bat. No. This lady's not for turning. Now, Hamilton, with a valid challenge, with 1 point straight off the bat, they have 53 seconds on the subject of my favourite alchemist, starting now.
The only alchemist that I know is a full metal alchemist. That is an animated...
Taylor, with 45 seconds, an animated challenge. Yeah. What is your challenge by the rules of Just a Minotaur?
It was the mudslide for me, Ramji.
It was the mudslide for me too, Taylor. And on that challenge, you gain 1 point indeed, and you
really
have 45
strong start,
seconds
guys.
on the subject of...
We're professionals, right? Like, look at this.
This is an entirely professional outfit. With 45 seconds on the clock, the subject of my favourite alchemist, starting now.
My favorite alchemist is called Kivit, a rock gnome from Sundabar, and she was kidnapped by harpies. But while she was in the air, she was busy making an elixir, or was it a homunculus? That's another thing that alchemists can do if they are artificers. I'm assuming that's what we're talking about, because this is D&D, and in...
Hamilton with 21 seconds left on the clock. Perhaps a gracious interruption. What is the nature of your challenge?
Repetition of the letter D.
Oh.
D and D.
D. I think I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt to Taylor on that one, because D&D is often used as a term by itself. So okay. I am going to say that's an invalid challenge, I'm afraid, my Lord Viscount. And I will be giving Taylor a point, and 21 seconds remaining on the clock on the subject of my favourite alchemist, starting now.
She stole a beer from a sleeping guard in Waterdeep because she didn't have any vials to make elixirs in.
Hamilton, round for a second pass. What is the nature of your challenge by the rules of Just a Minotaur?
Repetition of elixirs.
It was, in fact, a repetition of elixirs. Very nicely noticed. Giving you a point and a valid interruption with 11 seconds left on the clock on the subject of my favourite alchemist, Lord Viscount Admiral Hamilton, starting now.
My favourite alchemist is probably one of the Johnson brothers. They make talcum powders as well as other lotions and ointments that you can put on your body.
Speaking as the buzzer, the whistle goes off, and Hamilton, in fact, has actually correctly leapt into the lead, one might say, on the subject of my favourite alchemist, and in fact, it is a remarkable 3 points, and Taylor with remarkable 2 points, and JR and Chloe are biding their time, taking a moment Really just focusing on what's important in life.
Yeah,
Now,
don't bait Chloe. We're gonna get whipped again.
She wants to gain that underdog credit, isn't it? That's what
Chloe
it is.
just wants to. She's gonna wait, and then when she rolls in with 25 points, like in the last minute,
as she
we're all
did
gonna be
in
sorry.
many of
No
our earlier
comment.
games.
That's what happened in this last round. We were there. We were there.
Well, Taylor, now it's your opportunity on the subject of how I met my party. 60 seconds on the subject of how I met my party with Taylor starting now.
I was at a real party talking badly about the people around us. I wandered up to Daniel and asked, "Hey, that person over there, how much money do you think it would cost for them to eat a real human poop?" And we discussed it for about an hour before someone heard. And after that, we decided the only thing left for us to do was to create an actual play podcast so that the world could hear us do that all the time. And, you know, it was maybe a mistake, but a lot of you are out there listening to it. And so what does that say about you? And how much would it cost for you to consume it?
Oh, a remarkable 51 seconds, but an interruption.
That's a true story.
What is your interruption, Hamilton? Sorry.
Repetition of how much would it cost? There was quite a few words.
Indeed. Yes, indeed it was.
Sorry.
Well, as Taylor correctly put the question to you, Hamilton, how I met my party, with 9 seconds left on the clock, starting now.
How I met my party. What an interesting question one could ask of me. I'm looking at the time right now to see how long it will take for me.
A most, one might say, unsportsmanlike,
Yes, exactly.
entirely gamesman-like approach to 9 seconds, but you have in fact successfully both interrupted and finished the round while speaking with the subject of how I met my party. So that puts you on 5 points with Taylor on 2. Chloe and JR yet to get off the mark still. So obviously giving you guys a significant head start, knowing that, you know, they
You
have
just
the real
can't
cards.
deal with our speed.
We can't.
Yes, quite so.
That's not incorrect.
So, the subject now turns to a regular and wonderful player of this game, Hamilton. Welcome back to the show.
All right. Yes.
I implore you to listen to Viscount Hamilton speaking on the subject of Dude, Where's My Spelljammer with no hesitations, repetitions, or deviations for 60 seconds, starting now.
I was sitting on the dock of a bay with one of my best friends named Peter, and I was asking him what happened last night, and he turned to me and said, "Dude, where's my Spelljammer?" And I went, "I have no idea. Literally everything has been taken from my brain right now at this moment in time." So we then decided to go on this epic adventure across all of the planes of existence looking for this Spelljammer of question. Then on the way, when we found ourselves amongst a party of beholders creating a monstrous artifact to their god, we found that actually they were using parts of the Spelljammer to create it as some sort of weird totem. We were shocked, amazed, and awed at their ability to architect.
How is that allowed?
Amazed and awed are the correct terms as you spoke 60 seconds uninterrupted on the subject of Dude, Where's My Spelljammer, which in and of itself is remarkable.
That was brutal. That was brutal.
Well done.
I don't know how I did that. I just went somewhere. Halfway through, I was figuring out what am I going to do, and then I just entered a zone, and then I ended up here.
Genuinely wonderful. Well, by the rules, just a minute, you not only gain a point for finishing while the buzzer's speaking, but because you spoke uninterrupted for the whole minute, you actually gained an extra bonus point. So you have sprung into the lead with 7 points as we move to JR for the final part of the first round. And the subject for you, JR, is things you find in a bag of holding. So, with 60 seconds to speak without hesitation, deviation, or interruption on the subject of the things you find in a bag of holding, JR, starting now.
You can find many things in a bag of holding. The most common ones are body parts: arms, legs, feet, fingers, heads, eyes, noses, lips, ears, clavicles. Sometimes you also find money in the form of gold, silver, copper, bricks made out of diamonds, and other things. Sometimes you also find magical items.
Oh, I
Bricks as a form of money. Sorry.
A very, very entertaining and really rather delightful 33 seconds there, JR. But Chloe, what is your interruption by the rules of just a minute?
Repetition of the word sometimes.
There was a repetition of the word sometimes. That was very nice to notice.
Sometimes too.
So Chloe, that gets you off the bat increase, as it were, and off the duck as we find you with 27 seconds left on the subject of the things you find in a bag of holding. Ready? Starting now.
My friend JR over here explained it very well, because body parts are a particular thing that you may find in a bag of holding. But he got one thing wrong. Usually, the body parts are all together. Many a party.
Oh, JR. With 11 seconds left, what is the nature of your interruption?
Body parts.
Body parts indeed. Body parts to the left, body parts to the right. But only you have the subject of the things you find in a bag of holding. With 11 seconds left to speak, starting now.
Again, there are many things that you can find in a bag of holding. But you know what you can't see in a bag of holding? It's another bag of holding. And that is because...
That is because, as you were speaking as the buzzer went off, you both gained a point for your interruption. You gained a point for speaking as the buzzer came in. So that leaves you with a total of 3 points. Still leaving Hamilton in a slightly unassailable position with 7 points, with JR with 3, Taylor with 2, and Chloe with 1, as we come round to our second round. With 60 seconds on the clock to speak about my favourite cantrip with no hesitations, no deviations, and no repetitions. Chloe, starting now.
My favourite cantrip is a particular one for one reason and one reason only. Prestidigitation.
JR. The booster
like what you're
rockets
doing
have
there.
engaged. Yeah, I think it is one reason and one reason only for your interruption. So, indeed, a valid challenge as the subject comes to you of my favourite cantrip with 54 seconds remaining on the clock, starting now.
My favorite cantrip is a cantrip that people have a hard time pronouncing. It is prestidigitation. Some people say it as prestidigitation.
Oh, Hamilton, what is your challenge by the rules of just a minute?
Repetition of the word prestidigitation, as well as people.
Yes.
Oh.
I think the word people is entirely valid because I think JR probably deviated from the English language as we know it and the rules of Dungeons and Dragons at the very least with the word but you are in fact correct. He did repeat the word people. That is a valid challenge by Hamilton, and with 41 seconds remaining on the clock, the subject of my favourite cantrip comes to you, starting now.
My favourite cantrip, and one that I think is underrated, is guidance. It gives a lot of benefits to a player by being very simply adding dice to rolls that you may take whilst undertaking tasks. Other cantrips that you may find in the wild running around like Pokemon are ones like, I can't think of anything, Thaumaturgy? where you can make doors and windows open to make sounds for you to scare people and think over there.
Oh, Chloe, with 6 seconds remaining on the clock, what is the nature of your challenge?
I'm doubting myself, but did you say people more than once?
Maybe.
I'm not even sure.
Well, Chloe, I think we owe you the benefit of that doubt, so we'll give that to you anyway.
Save me anyway.
Yes, desperately needed rescuing. He certainly repeated the word like, so that's good enough. Chloe, with 6 seconds remaining on the clock, the subject of my favourite cantrip, starting now.
I actually lied earlier, and my favourite cantrip is in fact light.
And speaking as the buzzer goes off, Chloe, there's an extra point for you. As I have a question, Hamilton. In what world is the cantrip guidance undervalued or underrated, as opposed to just spammed by fucking power gamers? Now, that being said, as
I have nothing to add.
as we move on to Taylor, in fact, with the subject of Fae Pop. Taylor, with 60 seconds to speak about the subject of Fae Pop.
Fae Pop.
With
We've stolen this from our conversation.
I believe I invented it, so I think it's all right. Well, let's put it this way. Certainly we invented it. There's no need for us to have a Simon and Garfunkel moment about this. We'll take joint credit. Now, on the subject of Fae Pop,
fine, Ringo.
60 seconds with no hesitations, no deviations, and no repetitions, starting now.
I went to the grocery store the other day. It was a Wednesday, and I purchased something called Fae Pop. I know what you're thinking. This was about music, a genre perhaps from the radio machine in the corner, but it isn't about that at all. It's about this drink that I've acquired.
JR, with a challenge of 39 seconds left on the clock, what is the challenge by the rules of Just a Minotaur? A repetition of about. Very nicely noticed, JR. So, as the subject of Fae Pop comes to you, with 39 seconds to go, starting now.
I have often wondered what Fae Pop is. Is it a bunch of fairies dancing to Western music or Eastern music or...
Chloe, with 27 seconds on the clock, what is the nature of your challenge?
Repetition of music.
It was, in fact, a repetition of music and an excellent pickup there. So that is your subject. The subject is Fae Pop with 27 seconds to go, starting now.
Right, you will listen to me right now. Never, ever hear that Fae Pop. It will destroy your life. There's a reason that fairies are known for manipulation and for casting spells of enchantment, trapping people into their courts to be musicians for them. They play until they die. Do you want that to happen to you? You can't. That would be really, really awful, and death is...
JR with a really timely challenge with 3 seconds left.
Really?
With 3 seconds on the subject of Fae Pop, JR, starting now.
There are other creatures that are...
You were speaking as the buzzer went to signify that 60 seconds was up on the subject of Fae Pop. Well done, JR. That's an extra point for you as you rapidly catch up. Chloe, a very entertaining and informative educational warning to all
and
the
scary.
kids and other folks out there who are easily led. Kids, don't do Fae Pop. Now, on that note, we find ourselves with Lord Hamilton. Lord Hamilton, your subject to speak about for 60 seconds is Baby Slaad. So 60 seconds with no hesitations, no repetitions, and no deviations on the subject of Baby Slaad, starting now.
Baby Slaad doo da dee dim. Baby Slaad da doo dee dum. Grey Slaad dee dum dee dum. I did it. I'm going to go for it. I can't help it. I'm happy to allow the repetition.
I did, in fact, wonder whether you're going to go for it or not, and well done. That was a courageous and bold move. Chloe, Intercepting Hamilton's courageous run for the line in his knickers. What is the nature of your challenge by the rules of Just a Minotaur?
I mean, repetition of every word beginning with D.
Well, he did go out of his way to try not to repeat them. So which particular
but then
words?
the second time, it was the same as the first time. So it was like D, do, da, dum.
Which particular word?
D? D was definitely there more than once.
D was
I'll
definitely
say
there.
D.
I think that's pretty fair. I was trying to give Hamilton as much of the benefit as possible for his very amusing and courageous attempt, but in fact, you were right. So, on that note, the subject of Baby Slaad comes to you, Chloe, for 51 seconds to continue speaking to begin speaking, starting now.
I can tell you horror stories about adoption, and one of them involves baby Slaads. Do not go to the center in the middle of the city, in the middle of an alley. There will be.
JR with a challenge at 40 seconds remaining on the clock. What is the nature of your challenge?
In the middle.
In the middle, indeed. As you are, in fact, in the middle of an accelerated and correct catch-up with Hamilton, with 40 seconds left on the subject of Baby Slaad, starting now.
People like baby Slaads, but they forget some things, like the Papa Slaads and the Mama Slaads, that are also likable and adorable, because all Slaads are nice, warm, and cute, unlike the other creatures in the realm that are not so.
Oh, well, you were doing so well, and I was bopping along in my head to Daddy Slaad and Mummy Slaad. But, Chloe, with your challenge, with 15 seconds left on the clock, what is the nature of your challenge and the rules of Just a Minotaur?
Hesitation.
Hesitation, indeed, that is absolutely right. So the subject comes to you with a correct interruption, starting now.
A former acquaintance of mine wanted to adopt a child, so they went to the middle of this alley and they found
Hamilton with a very well remembered challenge. What is your challenge?
Repetition of in middle as well as adopt as well. So
I actually said adoption the first time.
okay, but middle.
But you can
definitely
have
said
middle.
Definitely, and by the rules of Just a Minotaur, whatever you say in a given round, doesn't matter whether you've been interrupted or the subject has come back to you, you cannot repeat it unless it is in the title of the subject. So, as a correct interruption there from Hamilton, as he gains a point, and with 8 of your Earth seconds left on the clock, Hamilton, starting now.
Baby Slaads are mainly produced around a fabulous looking rock in the middle of limbo. They all converge at a certain...
As you spoke, as the buzzer went, that is another point for you, Hamilton. Well done. Taking you into a significant lead. As we move to the last subject of the game, JR, with you, the subject will be My Last Patron. With 60 seconds on the subject of My Last Patron, starting now.
My last patron was a very.
As you sow, so shall you reap. Chloe, now, with 55 seconds left on the clock, what is the nature of interruption? I don't care, you're getting a point. So, what is the nature of interruption by the rules of this minute?
Hesitation.
Hesitation, indeed, there absolutely was. And gloriously challenged, the subject goes to you. My last patron, 55 seconds, starting now.
My last patron died, and it made me very sad. It was a kraken from the depths of the ocean. I fed it library books because it needed knowledge to live. But my party decided that the death of the kraken was what they needed.
JR with a challenge at 38 seconds.
repetition of Kraken.
It was indeed a correct challenge with a repetition of Kraken. What a Kraken round this is. The subject.
Point from Ramsey. Point from Ramsey.
38 seconds to speak without interruption, hesitation, or deviation, starting now.
My last patron It's a patron that's not common in other games. This is because this patron is found in a book that's not common in
25 seconds left on the clock on the subject of my last patron. Hamilton, did you have a challenge?
Yes, JR repeated a word.
Yeah, I don't remember it.
I think it was, I can't remember what it was.
I know.
Oh, Taylor, go on, take it.
But
Taylor.
I can't tell you. It was common.
Common, that was it.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes.
I'm not.
Yes, it was.
I'm not giving.
Give it to Taylor. Give it to Taylor. Take it. Give it to Taylor.
Yeah, we certainly are. We are certainly giving it to
Because
Taylor.
I'm starving.
On the subject of my last patron, with 25 seconds remaining on the clock, Taylor, the subject is with you to do without hesitation,
Oh, right.
deviation, or repetition, starting now.
My last patron was called Franklin, and they took very good care of me. I was fed live fish every day, and in the evening, when the sun would go down, then it was time for me to eat an entire human being. This was a gift from Franklin.
Oh wait, no. Oh well, you carried on, so now I have another one. So
With 9 seconds left on the clock, what is your interruption and challenge, Chloe?
well, I was going to say repetition of eat, and then I realized that she said
No.
fed, but then she said Franklin again. So
Oh, so hoist by your own petard. Unfortunately, there, Taylor, you find yourself losing that subject with 9 seconds left to Chloe, who gets to speak for 9 seconds, starting now.
what?
You just challenge us.
I like reflex press the button.
By the rules of Just a Minotaur, what is your challenge?
I'm an idiot is my challenge.
I'm afraid I can't consider that to be a correct challenge. So, by the rules of Just a Minotaur, the subject goes back to you, Chloe. You have
So then
8
I get a point
seconds.
for that because
Wait,
we're questioning Chloe's stability now.
Doesn't Chloe get a point for an incorrect challenge towards herself?
No, she doesn't. Nevertheless, Hamilton, I'm going to give you a point for your amusement, and I'm going to give Taylor a point for their amusement. I'm going to give Chloe and JR in a death match, so I'm going to leave them just where they are. So,
1 point for Franklin for that fresh human for dinner.
Indeed. So, with 8
Wow.
seconds left on the clock, but no more Franklins left. Chloe, starting now.
The adventurers that I was with decided that when I called upon my patron to help us, they instead would attack it.
And speaking as the buzzer went, Chloe, that gets you 1 more point. Congratulations. The subject of my last patron. And so that brings us to the end of the show. That's remarkable. Well done, everybody. With our scores showing Hamilton with a remarkable and leading 11 points. JR and Chloe have battled it out into submission at 9 points each and collapsing into failure. Now with Taylor holding the fort and just making sure everyone's all right. With 4
Number
points. Yes, exactly.
It's like golf. You want to get the lowest
Closest
points.
to number 1, so I mean,
Yeah.
logic would dictate.
Exactly.
It's the lower points.
If
Absolutely.
this were golf,
If this were golf, you
maybe.
wouldn't
I'm
see
not
me
entirely
for dust.
sure that
I'd
that's true.
definitely be wearing better socks, that's for sure.
What socks are you wearing, Hamilton?
I retract my statement about golf. I have absolutely no idea.
It was a correct statement, don't you worry.
Remarkable. Right. Well, it just remains for me to say thank you to everybody that's viewing and watching from around the world and listening and watching us on Twitch completely accidentally. As we have been playing Just a Minotaur, you can catch us at T4Cstudios.com or on YouTube or various other things like that, as we will see you the next time we get together to play Just a Minotaur.